Hi everybody, this is Hero from the Birds back with another Shadowlands video. In this video I'd like to talk about two main topics that dovetail together when I was doing some testing. On the one hand, it's a kind of range style of Holy Paladin for Venthyr that I haven't talked about too much lately, but I wanted to feature just briefly to show you some of the thoughts that are going on in my mind. This one's a low haste version, and we'll talk about it going forward. And something that dovetailed with it was raid leading as a Holy Paladin. What's it like, and why is it sometimes difficult? So we had an instance where I had a chance to help an LFR group work their way through council, and I just wanted to talk about what that might mean for you or for your raid leader in general. So this Holy Light build basically has the following talents. You want Light's Hammer. We don't really want to be building with Crusader's Might or Crusader Strike in general, so we're not going to use that. Also, Bestow Faith is just a low CD button that we don't want to be pressing, so we will prefer instead to have a nice big 1 minute CD that does a lot of throughput, and it's a set it and forget it type of thing. Judgment of the Light similarly just synergizes fairly well. It's kind of passive. So too for Divine Purpose and Awakening. More wings uptime on the whole is good, and it's just going to provide us the most benefit for this kind of a build. And then Beacon of Faith for raids, in part so that we can do something like I'm going to talk about in general with our Holy Light casts. So this build in general is useful when you can have very high stacked raid groups. You're going to be leveraging your mastery, crit if you can get it, versatility to pump out a ton of heals. And this synergizes quite well with Ashen Hallow, which is going to produce a lot of healing in melee in general. So if you can have the entire raid stacked together, Hallow is going to do a ton of work for you. You could see in the opening of this video, Hallow almost single-handedly handling the first phase, and this would be true even through Heroic in the first phase of this fight. Hallow is more than enough with this kind of mastery to do quite a lot of work. In general, you can see here the playstyle is to build Holy Power largely through casting Holy Light on the tanks. And this is a benefit because it's pretty efficient. You get Holy Light transfers to your beacon target. You get a Holy Power for casting it on your tank. And you get just somewhat good throughput with the infusion buff Holy Lights going out. So I really like this strategy. The idea here is to move our spot healing toward Word of Glory in general and allow the rest of our healers to offer throughput for the raid. What we're going to do is offer our own CD in Ashen Hallow and Wings paired together to provide a lot of stacked healing. And you can see it going off here just as an example. While we're within this combo, we're going to favor pressing Hammer of Wrath and Holy Shock to build Holy Power. You can cast your Holy Lights while you're waiting for Hammer to come back up, but you can also just start Crusader Striking for these kinds of moments and cast out your Light of Dawns, that sort of thing. When you're outside of those windows, cast your Holy Light on the tanks exclusively to keep them topped and make sure they're okay. Don't try to spot heal with Holy Light with low haste. You just won't get there in time if you're casting on another member. But this brought up a kind of interesting note for me as far as the performance of any healer or of anyone, I suppose, in a raid in general, and how that's affected by the need to raid lead. So you can see here me chatting to everybody to direct their attention, and obviously in an organized raid you have comms, but the principle is basically the same. That if you're a raid leader, you can expect to have reduced performance. And that makes some sense when you think about it. Your attention is going to be on the mechanics and on adjusting for CDs and helping people to watch out for where things are. And it's true across all roles, whether you're a tank, DPS, or a healer. You will have reduced performance in general for your raid if you're doing raid leading. And that's okay. It's actually worth the attention. You can see as I work through this, we had about 2 or 3 wipes before I started to chat with them about what to do. It's worth my doing less healing and less damage overall for our group to do the right sort of thing and to be prepared to deal with each of the mechanics. So you can think about raid leading as having a major buff on communication, and that being something that's absolutely necessary in order for you to succeed in the encounter, and then you can just subtract that benefit that you're bringing to the group from your throughput in general. You're going to see that ranged DPS are probably the best placed to do raid leading overall, and that's because they can see the entire encounter usually. They're not focused on healing meters as much, or not meters, but healing bars. And they can do a rotation that's fairly straightforward. So once they've nailed it down, it's not going to change too much for them. They get their timings right, and then they can just focus on mechanics. Healers are on the exact opposite of the spectrum. They tend to be the most difficult to raid lead, in part because you have split attention between healing bars and DPS, in part because you need to track spot healing, which is a really difficult thing to do well in general, but when you're also attending to mechanics, it's hard to do that. And then finally, especially if you're a ranged, or excuse me, especially if you're a melee healer, like Mistweaver Monk or Holy Paladin, or if you're a healer that really relies on casting against enemies, so for Disc Priests as well as Holy Paladins, your focus is going to be split even one more time, and so it makes it even more difficult to do your duties as a raid leader while performing. So if you're raid leading as a Holy Paladin, you already have my kudos, you're doing a great job. Don't worry too much about the throughput side of it. Just think about your addition and the kind of comments you can make that will help your group to succeed, and don't worry too much about the meters. But as far as tips are concerned, this is why I kind of like this Holy Light build, is the strategy is fairly straightforward, casting Holy Lights on your tanks, filling in with Holy Power, letting your other raid members do most of the other stuff. It's not like your Glimmer build where you're hammering your keyboard trying to get Holy Shot Crusader Strikes and just pumping as much as you possibly can and having major GCD issues to think about every single moment. And it will relieve the burden if you're doing your raid leading from following that rotation and trying to respond to emergencies at the same time. So just thought I'd put this video together for you guys so you can get a first glimpse at kind of low haste Holy Light build, and also think about ways in which maybe you could help your own raid leader take on some of the responsibilities like kick orders. Think about call-outs that you can help them with, especially if they're in a healing role. You can see that the burden is going to be pretty heavy for them overall. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments if you'd like more of these kinds of raid leading oriented conversations and analyses, and I can talk to you a bit more in detail about the things I'm thinking about as I move through each of the fights, that kind of stuff. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.